Now, here's a question that's going to piss you off. What if you're working too hard? Not working hard, like too hard. As in the amount of effort you're pouring into teaching is actively making you worse at your job, not better. Now, I know what you're thinking, but my students need me. Or maybe you'll say something like, the curriculum is packed. If I don't do it, who will? Cool. Now, how's that working out for you? When was the last time you had energy left at the end of the day? When did you last feel excited about teaching instead of just capable of getting through it? Because here's the truth. I work harder in my last year of teaching than I ever had. 5 different subjects, late nights, grading until midnight. And I was the worst teacher I'd ever been. Not because I didn't care, no, but because I was running on empty. My students got the exhausted, reactive version of me. And then I discovered the 80% rule. I started teaching at 80% instead of 110%. And I became a better teacher, not worse. Hey everyone, I'm Keith, and today I'm going to show you why teaching at 100% makes you worse, what the 80% rule actually means, and the 3 systems I use to implement it. Now here's the lie we've all been taught about teaching. Good teachers give everything, every ounce of energy, every spare minute, every piece of themselves. I call this the super teacher myth. The super teacher is always on, always prepared, always patient, and never says no. They also never set boundaries. The super teacher doesn't exist, but we keep trying to become them anyway. And here's what nobody tells you. Teaching at 100% doesn't make you twice as good as teaching at 80%. In fact, it even makes you worse. And here's why. Teachers make approximately 1,500 educational decisions per day. Decisions like, should I call in this student? Or should I reteach this concept? Or should I address this behavior now or later? Every decision drains your mental energy. Psychologists call this the decision fatigue. When you're already maxed out, running at 100% capacity, you will have no bandwidth left. You default to the easiest option and not the best one. You became rigid, reactive, you operate on autopilot. But here's the thing, you can't be creative when you're depleted. You can't adapt when you're exhausted. And you can't connect to students when you're running on fumes. So when you're teaching at 110%, you're not being a better teacher. You're actually becoming a worse one. So what's an alternative to this? Here comes the 80% rule. Now let me be clear first about what this is not. It's not about doing 80% of your job and calling it a day. No, it's not about that. It's not about lowering your standards or checking out emotionally. The 80% rule means operating at 80% of your maximum capacity most of the time. So you have 20% in reserve when it matters. Think of energy like a budget. If you spend 100% of your income every month, you will have nothing left when your car breaks or your medical bill arrives. But if you consistently spend 80%, you build a buffer. So when life happens, which it will, you have resources to handle it. And it's pretty much the same with teaching. If you're at 100% during a normal week, what happens when a parent demands a meeting? Or when a student has a crisis? Or when an admin adds another initiative? You will have nothing left. So you push to 110% or even 120%. And eventually, you'll find yourself having a panic attack in the parking lot. But if you operate at 80% during normal weeks, you will have margin, space to absorb the unexpected, energy to handle the hard stuff without failing. This isn't about being mediocre, it's about being sustainable. So how did I actually do this? I applied the 80% rule in 3 aspects of my teacher routine. Here are some examples. You can apply this in your lesson planning, in your grading, or in your communication to parents. Let's start with lesson planning. Before, I usually spent about 10 to 15 hours per week planning lessons. I always think that every plan or every class needed to be perfect, innovative, or differentiated. But after applying the 80% rule, instead of writing everything from scratch, I just created templates for my lessons. Now to show you what it looks like, let us use direct instruction as an example. With this template, I use 5 elements: the hook, the mini lesson, the guided practice, the independent practice, and exit ticket. Now you can add as many elements as you want, but this is pretty much the 5 frameworks that I use. Now instead of starting from scratch, I just filled in the content like what's the hook, or what are the examples, or what are the practice questions that I'm going to use. So here's a practical example for you guys. Since I was a math teacher, let's use an example for when I was teaching quadratic equations. Before, I usually spent 3 hours creating an elaborate investigation. Maybe students discovered the formula on their own through guided inquiry. I gave them handouts, or even used technology, or differentiated by readiness level. And those lessons were gorgeous, but it was super exhausting. The thing is, if students didn't engage the way I expected them to be, then the whole thing fell apart. Now here's what the 80% version looked like in a 50-minute lesson. So for the hook, which is about 5 minutes, I showed them a real problem. Let's say, for example, calculating the path of a basketball shot and when does it hit the ground. And then I introduced the mini lesson for about 15 minutes. So what this looks like is I show them the quadratic formula, for example, and give them 3 worked examples, and so on and so forth. After that, a guided practice for about 10 minutes. So we do 2 problems together and I check for understanding. And then independent practice, which is about 15 minutes. So students work on the problem sets. I just roam around and see if there's someone that needed help. And then finally, after that, we do an exit ticket where I show them 1 problem and then they apply the formula or the learnings that they had during the session. So as you can see, it's the same learning outcome, but 90% less prep time. And the surprising thing is the students learned it just as well, or even better in some cases, because I had mental bandwidth to notice who was confused and adjust in real time. So by doing this, as a result, my planning dropped to 3 to 4 hours per week. My lessons weren't perfect, but they were solid. And because I wasn't exhausted, I had the mental space to be responsive. The second aspect that I apply the 80% rule is on grading. So before, I graded everything, like every homework, every quiz, every practice problems, like 8 to 10 hours per week. Whereas in the 80% rule, I use a 3-tier grading system. So tier 1, this is where 80% of your work should go. It's usually for completion check. Did they do it? Yes or no? And you'll spend about 30 seconds per student. For tier 2, 15% of the work should go here. It just involves a quick feedback, a simple rubric, 1 strength, and 1 thing to improve. You'll spend about 2 to 3 minutes per student. For tier 3, this is 5% of your work. So this is deep feedback on major assessments that actually matters. So you'll spend about 10 to 15 minutes per student. Now let me show you how this works with quadratic equations. So for example, tier 1, so these are daily practice problems. You can use this from Monday to Wednesday. The students complete 10 practice problems. I walk around during the class, spot check a few, and at the end, they self-check using the answer key I project. I collect them and then quickly scan for completion. Check or no check in the gradebook, or 1 or 0, it's up to you. And you're giving 30 seconds per student and then you're done pretty much. So for tier 2, usually we apply this in a Friday quiz, so 8 problems, for example, and I use a simple rubric. I then write 1 sentence feedback. So for example, hey, good job on the standard form, or something like watch your signs when you're using the formula. So you spend about 2 to 3 minutes per quiz. For tier 3 unit test, this is where I invest time. So I create detailed rubrics, identify pattern in their errors. I give specific guidance. So for example, hey, you're making a sign error in step 3, or here's what to watch out for next time. Or if someone bumps it, I assign a reteaching session and let them retake. So you spend about 10 to 12 minutes per test. As a result of applying this, my grading time dropped to 2 to 3 hours per week. My feedback became more impactful because there was less of it and it was very targeted. And students started to take ownership. When not everything was graded, they had to engage with the material for understanding and not just for points. The next area that I applied the 80% rule is in communication boundaries. Before, I answer emails at all hours. Like every time I hear that email or text notification, I feel the urge to reply, and I always do. So I was always available via text, always on call, and to be honest, looking back at it now, I hated it. But with the 80% rule, here's what I changed. I set up email windows where I check twice per day. So for example, in my case, it's at 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. I also set autoresponders in my email. So for example, if somebody emails me out of schedule, then there's a response email to that, which is automated. You don't have to check for it. So here's what this looked like in practice. Say for example, I receive an email from the parent asking about his son's understanding of the quadratic equation. The old me would have responded immediately with a long ass explanation, or maybe even create a video tutorial or send extra resources. But when I apply the 80% rule, when I see that email, I send a template response, like something along the lines of, hey, thanks for reaching out. I'd be happy to help, but please have him attend my office hours, Tuesdays to Thursdays, or schedule an appointment. Or in the meantime, here's the link to the practice problems with work solutions from class. Something along these lines. So you copy and paste those templates, you personalize per student, send, and then done. So as a result of doing this, the response time went from immediate to within 24 hours. And I also got my weekends and evenings back. Now, the pattern I see across all three examples is I wasn't lowering my standards. I was just simplifying the processes and being strategic about where my energy went. Now, here's where I need to be transparent with you guys. Because even after implementing all this, even operating at 80%, I still left teaching in 2023. But here's what is important. The 80% rule is why I was able to leave with dignity. When I said no to summer school that year, I used those months to learn data analytics. Like every night after teaching, I studied for 1 to 2 hours. Python, SQL, data analysis. Without the 80% approach, I wouldn't have had the energy and I would have burned out completely. Stayed trapped because I had no options. And eventually become the bitter, check-out teacher I swore I'd never be. Instead, the 80% rule gave me capacity. It gave me options. Now, some teachers use it to stay in the classroom sustainably for decades. They love teaching, and the 80% lets them do this without destroying themselves. I use it to transition out with intention. Not because I hated teaching, but because even at 80%, the system was broken and I needed something different. And both paths are valid. The point isn't whether you stay or leave. The point is that you get to choose instead of being forced out by burnout. And that's what the 80% rule gives you: agency. You're not making desperate decisions. You're not staying in a situation that's destroying you because you don't have energy to imagine anything else. You have capacity, you have options, you have control. So how do you start? This week, pick one area to simplify. You can do it in your lesson planning, in your grading, your communication, classroom routines. Just one, pick one. Implement one system and give it 2 weeks. You'll probably feel guilty, and that's normal. The guilt isn't proof you're doing something wrong. It's proof you're doing something different. And keep going anyways. After 2 weeks, evaluate. Then add a second system once the first feels automatic. Now this month, layer in another change. Build slowly. This year, expand 80% beyond teaching. You can apply it in your relationships, health, personal growth. Always remember that 1% better every day compounds into massive change. The key mindset shift is to stop measuring your worth by your exhaustion. Your value as a teacher isn't contingent on your depletion. You don't have to sacrifice yourself to matter. Good teachers don't give everything. They give strategically, and they're the ones that last. If this resonates and you want the full framework, like all the systems, the psychology research, the emotional toolkit for dealing with guilt, I wrote a book about this. And it's called The 80% Teacher: How Doing Less Can Help You Teach Better, Live Happier, and Last Longer. Inside, you would find systems for lesson planning and grading, just like what I showed you, and how to streamline your workload without sacrificing quality. The book will also tell you how to set boundaries without guilt and protect your time while still being effective. It will also mention the psychology of burnout, so you understand why you're exhausted and how to prevent collapse. Again, this book isn't about quitting teaching, it's about sustainability. About recognizing that you have finite resources and learning to allocate them wisely is the best thing that you can do right now. So links in the description if you want to check it out. Now here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to be extraordinary every day. You just have to be good enough, reliably, for long enough that it compounds into something extraordinary. Because a teacher who lasts isn't the one who gives everything. It's the one who gives strategically. Teaching at 80% isn't about lowering your standards. It's about recognizing that sustainable excellence requires restraint and not relentlessness. So here's my challenge to you guys this week. Pick one thing, one system, and then see what happens. Because the first step to teaching at 80% isn't doing less. It's redefining what more even means. If you're a teacher feeling burned out or stuck, please subscribe because I make content about teaching psychology, career transitions, and building a life that doesn't require self-destruction. And if you want to know my story of how I quit and why I quit, watch this video next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.